Respected viewers, dear family of truth seekers and dreamers, there is a question that haunts the quiet moments of millions of lives, a question whispered in the dark hours before dawn, a question that echoes through decades of work, sacrifice, and hope. Why, after all this effort, am I still not wealthy? The answer to this question is not what most people want to hear. It's not comfortable. It's not kind. But it is absolutely undeniably true. Most people will never be rich. Not because the world is unfair. Not because opportunities don't exist. Not because they weren't smart enough or didn't work hard enough. Most people will never be rich because they fundamentally misunderstand what wealth is, how it's created, and what it costs to obtain it. Let me tell you something that will disturb you. Wealth is not democratic. It does not distribute itself evenly among those who desire it. It flows with mathematical precision to those who understand its nature and align their behavior with its requirements. And those requirements, they are brutally simple. So simple that people reject them as too obvious to be the real answer. So simple that entire industries exist to convince you that wealth must be more complicated, must require secrets and insider knowledge and special advantages. But the truth is devastatingly straightforward. Wealth goes to those who spend less than they earn and invest the difference consistently, patiently, for decades. That's it. That's the entire secret. Everything else is commentary. And yet 95% of people will never do this. They will spend their entire lives earning money and then immediately converting that money back into consumption, into things that depreciate, into experiences that evaporate, into lifestyles that imprison them. They will die having moved millions of dollars through their hands and having kept none of it. Why? Why does this happen with such predictable regularity? Because most people are not actually trying to build wealth. They think they are. They believe they are. They'll swear on everything sacred that financial security is their goal. But their behavior, their daily choices, their actual allocation of resources tells a different story. Let me tell you about a man I knew. We'll call him Richard. Richard was hardworking, started his career at 24, making $55,000 a year. By 40, he was making $130,000. By 50, $180,000. Over his career, he earned well over $3 million. When Richard was 55 years old, he had a heart attack. Not fatal, thank God, but severe enough to force him to confront his mortality. And in confronting his mortality, he was forced to confront his finances. He had $67 in retirement savings, $67,000, after 30-plus years of working, after earning over $3 million. Where did the money go? It went to a house that was too big, cars that were too expensive, vacations he couldn't afford, restaurants because cooking felt like work, gadgets because they were new, clothes because the old ones felt dated, gifts because saying no felt cheap. It went to maintaining an image of success while building nothing real underneath that image. Richard sat in my office with tears in his eyes and said something I've never forgotten. I thought I was doing everything right. I thought earning more was the same as building wealth. I thought looking successful meant I was successful. He paused, staring at his hands. I spent 30 years earning a good living, and I have nothing to show for it except things I don't even care about anymore. This is the honest truth that most people never confront until it's too late. Earning money and building wealth are not the same thing. They're not even related. You can earn millions and die broke. You can earn modestly and retire wealthy. The difference is not in the earning. It's in what happens after the earning. It's in the gap between income and expenses. It's in what you do with that gap. Most people don't have a gap. They spend exactly what they earn, sometimes more. And they convince themselves this is normal, responsible even. After all, they're not going into debt, well, except for the mortgage and the car loans and maybe a little credit card balance. But that's just how life works, right? Wrong. That's not how life works. That's how poverty works. Comfortable, middle class, respectable poverty. But poverty nonetheless, because if you need your paycheck to survive, if missing 2 months of income would devastate you, if you can't walk away from your job without fear, you're not financially secure. You're financially dependent. And financial dependence, no matter how comfortable the cage, is not wealth. Let me tell you what wealth actually is. Wealth is not a number in a bank account. It's not a portfolio balance or a property value or a salary figure. Wealth is options. Wealth is time. Wealth is the ability to say no. Wealth is waking up and choosing what to do with your day based on meaning rather than necessity. And here's the brutal truth. Most people will never have this because they don't actually want it badly enough to pay the price. They want the fantasy of wealth, the feeling of wealth, but not the reality of wealth, because the reality of wealth requires sacrifice, real sacrifice, not theoretical sacrifice, not someday sacrifice, but today's sacrifice, tomorrow's sacrifice, next year's sacrifice. It requires saying no when everyone else says yes. It requires looking ordinary when you could look impressive. It requires driving the used car, living in the modest home, skipping the vacation, wearing the old clothes, and enduring the judgment of people who equate spending with success. Most people simply won't do this. The social cost is too high. The delayed gratification is too painful. The gap between effort and visible result is too wide. So they make a different choice. They choose to look wealthy over being wealthy. And they spend their lives wondering why wealth never comes. I want to tell you about another person, a woman named Helen. Helen was a schoolteacher, made of $44,000 a year when she started. Retired 40 years later, making $68,000. Never married, no inheritance, no lucky breaks. When Helen died at 89 years old, she left an estate worth $4.3 million to charity. $4.3 million from a teacher's salary. How is this possible? I studied Helen's life extensively, talked to people who knew her, examined her financial records with her estate's permission, and I discovered something remarkable. Helen lived in the same modest apartment for 50 years, drove the same car for 23 years, bought her clothes at thrift stores, rarely ate at restaurants, never took expensive vacations, but she was not miserable. By all accounts, Helen was deeply content. She read voraciously, had close friendships, volunteered in her community, enjoyed simple pleasures, walks in nature, concerts in the park, game nights with neighbors. She just didn't spend money. Not because she was stingy or fearful, but because she didn't need to. The things that made her happy cost little or nothing, and everything she didn't spend, she invested. Consistently, automatically, for 40 years, 10% of her salary, every single month, into a simple mix of index funds, nothing fancy, nothing clever. Just steady, patient, disciplined investing over 4 decades. The compound growth did the rest. Helen understood something that Richard never learned. She understood that there are 2 paths to financial security. You can earn a lot and spend a lot, or you can earn modestly and spend little. The first path requires constant striving, constant stress, constant fear of losing the income that sustains your lifestyle. The second path requires initial sacrifice, but leads to genuine peace. Most people choose the first path because it feels like success, it looks like winning. It earns approval from others. But Helen chose the second path, and she died wealthy, not in appearance, but in reality. Not in the eyes of others, but in the freedom she possessed. This is the honest truth about wealth that nobody wants to hear. It's available to almost anyone. The math works at almost any income level above poverty, but it requires a willingness to live differently than the culture around you. It requires rejecting the equation that spending equals happiness. It requires finding joy in things that don't cost money. It requires building self-worth from something other than what you own or how you look. And most people simply cannot do this. Not because they're incapable, but because they won't. Because the social and psychological cost feels too high. They'd rather spend their lives chasing money to fund a lifestyle they don't even enjoy than spend a few years of discipline building genuine security. Let me show you the mathematics of this choice. Imagine 2 people. Both earn $60,000 a year. Both live in the same city with the same opportunities and challenges. Person A spends $50,000 a year, saves $2,000 down. After 30 years with modest investment returns, they have approximately $135,000. Not nothing, but not security either. Not options, not freedom. Person B spends $40,000 a year, saves their $18,000. Same 30 years, same returns, they have approximately $1.2 million. Same income, same city, same time period. The only difference, person B was willing to live on 30% less, to drive an older car, to live in a smaller place, to spend differently than their peers. That choice, that single choice to need less, created $1 million difference in outcomes. This is not complicated. This is not mysterious. This is pure mathematics. but mathematics that most people will never apply because the cultural programming is too strong. We're taught that we deserve comfort, that we've earned the right to spend, that life is short and we should enjoy it now, that anyone who chooses otherwise is either a miser or a fool. But the wise, the truly wise, understand that there are different kinds of enjoyment. There's the enjoyment of consumption, which is intense, immediate, and fleeting. And there's the enjoyment of security, which is subtle, growing, and permanent. Most people chase the first. A few understand the value of the second. And here's where the tragedy deepens. Most people who never become wealthy don't fail because they chose the wrong investments. They don't fail because they missed opportunities or lacked information. They fail at a much more fundamental level. They fail because they cannot distinguish between needs and wants, between value and price, between assets and liabilities. Let me tell you about the lies we tell ourselves, the comfortable delusions that keep us poor while feeling justified. Lie number one, I need this. No, you don't. You want it. There's a profound difference between need and want, but we've collapsed the distinction so completely that we can't even see it anymore. You need shelter. You don't need a house with granite countertops and a 3-car garage in an expensive neighborhood. You need transportation. You don't need a 45,000 SUV with leather seats and a premium sound system. You need food. You don't need restaurant meals 4 times a week and premium organic everything. You need clothing. You don't need a closet full of items you wear once in brands that charge triple for a logo. But we've been systematically trained by billions of dollars in marketing to experience wants as needs, to feel genuine discomfort when we can't have what others have, to believe that choosing less is choosing deprivation. This is the first barrier to wealth. If you cannot distinguish need from want, you will spend everything. Always. At any income level. I once knew a couple, let's call them Michael and Jennifer. They earned a combined $240,000 a year, $250,000. More than 95% of households, they were broke, constantly stressed about money, living paycheck to paycheck despite a massive income. How? They needed $150,000 all in the house. They needed 2 new cars totaling $90,000. They needed private school for the kids at $35,000 a year. They needed vacations because they worked so hard. They needed to keep up with their neighborhood and social circle. Every single purchase felt necessary, justified, reasonable. After all, they earned good money. They deserved these things. This is what success looks like, right? But underneath all those needs was a simple truth. They were slaves. Slaves to their mortgage. Slaves to their car payments. Slaves to their lifestyle. Slaves to the opinions of people who didn't actually care about them. They earned a fortune and built nothing because they confused income with wealth and wants with needs. Contrast this with another couple I knew, David and Susan. Combined income of $85,000, significantly less than Michael and Jennifer. They retired at 54 with $1.8 million. How? They actually distinguished between needs and wants. They lived in a modest home they bought below their means. They drove used cars. They sent their kids to public school. They took inexpensive vacations. They were content with enough, and they invested the difference month after month, year after year. For 28 years, same economy, same investment opportunities, radically different outcomes. The difference wasn't in their earning power. It was in their relationship with consumption. This brings me to lie number 2. I'll save more when I earn more. No, you won't. This is perhaps the most dangerous lie because it feels so reasonable. It seems logical that with more income, saving would be easier, but it doesn't work that way. Not for most people, because as income rises, lifestyle rises. As lifestyle rises, perceived needs rise. As perceived needs rise, spending rises. And the gap between income and expenses stays exactly the same or actually shrinks. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's the silent killer of wealth building. You get a raise, fantastic. You've been working hard, you deserve it. So you upgrade, better apartment, nicer car, more expensive habits. After all, you can afford it now. And you can afford the higher spending as long as your income stays constant or grows. But what you can't afford is the opportunity cost, the compound growth you just sacrificed, the future wealth you traded for present consumption. Let me show you what this costs. And you earn $70,000 and save $10,000 a year. You get a $20,000 raise. You now earn $90,000. If you maintain your lifestyle and invest that entire raise, you'd now be saving $30,000 a year. Over 20 years at 8% returns, the difference between saving $10,000 versus $30,000 annually is approximately $800,000. $800,000, that's the cost of lifestyle inflation. That's what treating yourself to a nicer lifestyle actually costs. But most people never do this math. They just feel like they finally have permission to spend. They've been responsible long enough. They've earned the right to upgrade. And they upgrade themselves right out of any chance at wealth. I met a man named Thomas who perfectly illustrated this trap. Started his career at $50,000, drove a 20-year-old Honda, lived with roommates, saved 40% of his income, got promoted, now making $75,000 and moved to his own apartment, bought a newer car, saved 30%, another promotion, nicer apartment in a better neighborhood, much nicer car, saved 20%, senior position, making $150,000, house in the suburbs, premium car lease, saved 12%, executive role, making $220,000, bigger house, 2 luxury cars, country club membership, European vacations, saved 5%. Thomas's income grew 340% over 15 years. His net worth grew slower than someone making $50,000 the entire time and saving consistently. He'd climbed the career ladder and gone financially backward, because every rung up in income brought a larger jump in lifestyle. When I asked him why, he said something heartbreaking. I thought this is what success meant. Making more so you could have more. I didn't realize I was supposed to make more so I could save more. This is the trap. The cultural definition of success is about consumption, about visible markers of achievement, about living better. But the wealth builder's definition of success is completely different. It's about options, about security, about freedom from financial dependence. These are incompatible definitions you have to choose. You cannot optimize for both. You cannot both look wealthy and be wealthy in your accumulation years. Society rewards the former. Mathematics rewards the latter. Most people choose society's approval over mathematical reality. This brings me to lie number 3. Investing is risky. I could lose everything. This is true if you're gambling, if you're buying individual stocks based on tips, if you're trading options or cryptocurrency or whatever the speculative flavor of the month is. But if you're buying broad market index funds and holding for decades, the only risk is not starting. Let me be very clear about this. In the entire history of the American stock market, there has never been a 30-year period where a diversified investor lost money. Never. Not through the Great Depression. Not through World War II. Not through the dot-com crash or the 2008 financial crisis or any other catastrophe. Patient, diversified, long-term investing is not risky. It's the closest thing to guaranteed wealth building that exists in the real world. So why don't more people do it? Because it's boring. Because it requires patience. Because the gains are invisible day to day. Because it doesn't provide the dopamine hit of buying something new. And because, and this is crucial, it requires trusting in mathematics over emotion. When the market drops 20%, you need to keep investing. When your friends are panicking and selling, you need to hold. When it feels scary and uncertain, you need to stay the course. Most people cannot do this. They buy high when everyone's excited and sell low when everyone's fearful. They do exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. I knew a woman named Patricia who started investing $500 a month in index funds at age 30. She automated it. Never looked at her account, never checked the balance. Just kept contributing month after month for 30 years. At 60, she had $1.4 million. She'd contributed $180. The market had turned it into $1.4 million. Her coworker, Martin, also started at 30, also contributed $500 a month. But Martin watched his account constantly. When it dropped, he got scared and stopped contributing. When it recovered, he jumped back in. He sold during crashes and bought during bubbles. At 60, Martin had $430,000. Same contributions. Same time period. Same market. 1/3 the outcome, the difference. Patricia understood that time in the market beats timing the market. That patience beats cleverness. That boring consistency beats exciting speculation. But Martin couldn't help himself. He needed to feel like he was doing something, like he was being smart, like he was managing his risk. And his need to be actively involved destroyed his returns. This is lie number 4. I need to be smart about investing. No, you don't. In fact, the evidence is overwhelming that trying to be smart about investing makes most people worse off. The average investor underperforms simple index funds by approximately 3% annually. Not because they're stupid, but because they're too active, too clever, too convinced they can beat the system. The real intelligence in investing is recognizing what you don't know and building a strategy that doesn't require you to know it. Buy everything, hold forever, ignore the noise. But this level of humility, this acceptance that you can't predict the future or outsmart the market, most people cannot stomach it. They'd rather feel smart and get mediocre results than feel simple and get excellent results. Pride keeps more people poor than ignorance ever did. Now let me tell you about lie number 5, and this one cuts deeper than all the others. Money won't make me happy. This is partially true and mostly a cop-out. Money above a certain threshold doesn't increase day-to-day happiness. Research confirms this. Once you're above approximately $70,000 to $90,000 in annual income, more money doesn't make you significantly happier in your moment-to-moment experience. But, and this is crucial, financial security dramatically reduces anxiety. Options dramatically increase peace. Freedom from dependence dramatically improves quality of life. Money doesn't make you happy, but financial stress absolutely makes you unhappy. And the absence of financial stress, that quiet peace that comes from knowing you're secure, that's a form of happiness most people never experience. People who say money won't make me happy almost always either have money or have given up on getting it. It's a rationalization, a way to feel okay about not building wealth. But I've watched thousands of people over my lifetime, and I can tell you definitively, the people with financial security are not guaranteed to be happy, but they have far better odds than people in constant financial stress. The person who can leave a toxic job has better mental health than the person who's trapped. The person who can help their children in emergencies sleeps better than the person who can't. The person who doesn't worry about retirement enjoys their 50s and 60s more than the person who's terrified. Money doesn't make you happy, but it removes an enormous source of unhappiness, and that's worth pursuing. Yet people use this lie. Money won't make me happy to justify not saving, not investing, not building security, and then they wonder why they're anxious, why they feel trapped, why they're stressed about finances in their 60s and 70s. The honest truth. Most people will never be rich because they've internalized lies that make poverty feel acceptable, that make consumption feel necessary, that make wealth building feel either impossible or unimportant. And these lies are everywhere, in every advertisement, in every social media post, in every conversation about what success looks like. Breaking free from these lies requires something most people don't have: intellectual independence, the willingness to think for yourself, to reject cultural programming, to live by different rules than everyone around you. But there's one more layer to this truth, one more reason why most people never build wealth. And this one is the deepest and most painful to confront. Most people will never be rich because they're playing a game they don't understand, with rules they never questioned, for prizes they don't actually want. Let me explain what I mean. There's a phenomenon I've observed over decades of watching human behavior around money. People say they want wealth. They believe they want wealth. They work toward wealth. But when you examine their actual choices, their real priorities, something else emerges. They don't actually want wealth. They want status. They want approval. They want to feel successful in the eyes of others. And they've confused these desires with the desire for actual financial security. This confusion, this fundamental misunderstanding of what you're actually pursuing, destroys more financial futures than any market crash ever could. Let me tell you about a man named Jonathan. Jonathan was 38 years old, successful career in finance, earning $185,000 a year, had been earning 6 figures for over a decade, and he came to me with a question that revealed everything about why he'd never build wealth. "I've been thinking about buying a Porsche," he said. "I can afford the payments. I've worked hard. I deserve it. But something feels off. What do you think?" I asked him a simple question. "Why do you want a Porsche?" He paused, thought about it, then gave me the answer I expected. "Because I've always wanted one. Since I was a kid. It's been a dream." "Okay," I said, "but why? What will the Porsche give you that you don't have now?" Another pause, longer this time. Then I guess it would feel like I'd made it, like I'd achieved something, like I'm successful. And who needs to see this Porsche to confirm that you're successful? The silence that followed was profound, because Jonathan suddenly realized something he'd never articulated. He didn't want the Porsche for himself. He wanted it for the story it would tell to everyone else, to old classmates, to colleagues, to strangers at stoplights. He wanted external validation of internal worth, and he was about to spend $85,000 plus insurance and maintenance to get it. This is the core problem. Most people aren't building wealth because they're spending their money on something else. They're buying social status. They're purchasing identity. They're investing in the appearance of success instead of the reality of security. And here's the devastating truth: status is a game you can never win, because status is relative. It's about comparison, about being better than others, about having more than your reference group. So as soon as you achieve one level of status, the goalpost moves. You compare yourself to a wealthier peer group, and suddenly what felt like achievement feels inadequate. The house that seemed impressive when you bought it feels small when your coworker buys bigger. The car that felt luxurious when you leased it feels ordinary when someone parks a nicer one next to yours. The vacation you bragged about feels mediocre when friends post about somewhere more exotic. Status is a treadmill, and the faster you run, the faster it moves. You can never have enough, because enough is always defined as more than what others have. Wealth, by contrast, is not relative. Wealth is absolute. Wealth is having enough to be secure, to have options, to not worry. And enough, actual enough, is achievable. Millions of people reach it every year, but they reach it by opting out of the status game, by refusing to compare, by defining success internally rather than externally. Most people cannot do this. The need for approval is too strong. The fear of judgment is too powerful. The desire to fit in and be seen as successful is too overwhelming. So they spend their lives earning money to impress people who don't care about them, buying things they don't need, living in houses too big for their actual needs, driving cars that exist only to signal status. And they never build wealth because all their money goes to the status game. I want to tell you about two neighbors. Literally lived next door to each other for 20 years, similar ages, similar jobs, similar income levels. One drove a Mercedes, had the bigger house, took impressive vacations, had the landscaped yard and the outdoor kitchen, looked successful by every conventional measure. The other drove a 10-year-old Toyota, had a modest house, took camping trips, did his own yard work, looked ordinary. The first neighbor retired at 67, stressed about money, dependent on Social Security, worried about healthcare costs. Net worth approximately $180,000. The second neighbor retired at 59, completely secure, with options and freedom. Net worth $2.4 million. Same neighborhood, same opportunities, radically different outcomes. The difference: one was playing the status game, the other was playing the wealth game. And these are fundamentally incompatible games in your accumulation years. You have to choose. Will you look successful or be successful? Will you impress strangers or build security? Will you play for external approval or internal peace? Most people choose the former without even realizing there's a choice. They've been trained since childhood that success is about what you have, where you live, what you drive, where you vacation. Nobody taught them that real success is about what you own free and clear, about what you could maintain without a paycheck, about how many years you could survive without income, about the size of the gap between your needs and your resources. This alternative definition of success, it's not impressive. It's not Instagram worthy. It doesn't win admiration at dinner parties, but it's real, it's stable, it's achievable, and it leads to actual peace rather than the exhausting performance of fake success. Let me tell you about Elizabeth. She was a nurse, made 72s out a year for most of her career. Lived in a small condo, drove used cars, dressed modestly. Nobody noticed her. Nobody envied her. Nobody thought she was particularly successful. Elizabeth retired at 62 with $1.6 million. How? She saved 35% of her income for 34 years. That's it. No magic, no luck. Just discipline and mathematics. But here's what's important. Elizabeth told me she felt invisible for most of her career. She watched colleagues buy homes and take vacations and wear nice things. She watched them get admired and envied. And there were moments when she felt like she was missing out, like she was failing at life. But then I'd look at my investment account, she told me, and I'd remember that I was playing a different game, a longer game, a game where the prize isn't applause today but freedom tomorrow. Elizabeth understood something crucial. You have to decide what game you're playing and accept the rules of that game. If you're playing the wealth game, you can't keep score using status metrics. If you're building security, you can't measure success by how impressed your neighbors are. The two games have opposite objectives, opposite strategies, opposite definitions of winning, and most people try to play both games simultaneously. They want to build wealth and look wealthy. They want to save aggressively and spend impressively. They want security and status. And because these goals conflict, they end up with neither. They spend too much to build real wealth and save too much to truly impress. They're stuck in the middle, looking moderately successful while feeling perpetually insecure. This is the tragedy. Not that wealth is impossible, but that people sabotage their own wealth building because they can't commit to the game. They can't fully opt out of the status competition. They can't tolerate being misunderstood or underestimated. Their ego kills their security. Their pride destroys their peace. Their need for approval today sacrifices their freedom tomorrow. I've watched this play out thousands of times. Intelligent people, hardworking people, good people, making just enough wrong choices to ensure they never escape financial stress. Not big catastrophic wrong choices, small ones, daily ones. The choice to eat out instead of cook, to buy new instead of used, to impress instead of invest, to choose comfort today over security tomorrow. Individually, these choices are trivial. Collectively, over decades, they're the difference between wealth and poverty, between freedom and dependence, between peace and anxiety. And here's the cruelest part: by the time most people realize this, by the time they understand what game they should have been playing, it's too late. Not completely too late, but mostly too late. They're 55 or 60 with inadequate savings and limited time for compound growth to work. They spent 30 years playing the wrong game, optimizing for the wrong objectives, chasing the wrong prizes. And now they're facing retirement with fear instead of confidence. This doesn't have to be your story, but preventing it requires something difficult. It requires honest self-examination. It requires asking yourself uncomfortable questions. What am I really working for? Am I building wealth or buying status? Am I trying to be secure or trying to look successful? Am I living for my own peace or for others' approval? These questions are painful because most people discover that their stated goals and their actual behavior don't align. They say they want financial freedom, but their spending patterns reveal they want social acceptance. They claim they're building for the future, but their choices show they're performing for the present. The gap between what we say we want and what we actually pursue, that gap is where dreams die. That gap is why most people never become wealthy despite decades of good income. Closing that gap requires courage. The courage to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, to look less successful than you could look, to drive the old car when you could afford new, to live in the small house when you qualify for bigger, to vacation modestly when you could go exotic. It requires saying no. A lot to yourself and to others, to opportunities to spend, to pressure to upgrade, to the voice that says you've earned it, you deserve it, you should treat yourself. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. You cannot build significant wealth while simultaneously living a lifestyle designed to impress others. The mathematics don't work. The psychology doesn't work. The two objectives are mutually exclusive during your accumulation years, after you've built wealth. Sure, spend some. Enjoy some, upgrade some, but in the building phase, every dollar spent on status is a dollar not compounding into security, and most people will choose status every time, at every income level. Doctors and lawyers are often just as broke as middle managers. They just have nicer stuff while being broke. The income is irrelevant. The discipline is everything, and the discipline, the real discipline, is in refusing to play the status game while everyone around you is playing it. This is why most people will never be rich, not because they can't, but because they won't. They won't endure the social cost. They won't tolerate feeling ordinary. They won't accept being underestimated. They need the validation too much. They need the approval too badly. They need to feel successful in the eyes of others more than they need to actually be secure. And so they spend their lives on a treadmill, earning and spending, working and consuming, looking successful while building nothing real. It's a tragedy, but it's a chosen tragedy. Not consciously chosen, perhaps, but chosen nonetheless through 10,000 small decisions that prioritize appearance over reality. The honest truth about wealth is simultaneously simple and impossibly difficult. Simple because the formula is obvious: spend less than you earn, invest the difference, repeat for decades. Impossibly difficult because executing that formula requires rejecting nearly everything your culture tells you about success, happiness, and what a good life looks like. Most people will never be rich. This is not a moral judgment. It's not a statement about intelligence or worth or character. It's simply an observation of human nature colliding with mathematical reality. We are social creatures. We're hardwired to care what others think, to seek approval, to want to belong, to need validation that we matter, that we're successful, that our lives have value. And for most of human history, displaying resources was how you signaled those things. The person with the bigger house, the finer clothes, the more impressive possessions, they were successful. They'd made it, they mattered. But something changed in the last century. We entered an era of unprecedented prosperity, of easy credit, of marketing specifically designed to make you feel inadequate, so you'll spend money trying to feel adequate again. We entered an era where you can look wealthy without being wealthy, where you can signal success while drowning in debt, where the appearance of prosperity is more accessible than actual prosperity. And most people fell for it. They confused the signal with the reality. They thought if they could create the appearance of wealth, they were building wealth. They were wrong. And now, millions of people are discovering this truth too late. They're in their 50s and 60s with impressive resumes and good incomes and nothing saved, nothing built, nothing to show for decades of work except things that are depreciating and memories that have evaporated. They played the wrong game. They optimized for the wrong objectives. They succeeded at looking successful while failing to become secure. This is the tragedy I've witnessed over and over. Good people, hardworking people, people who genuinely believed they were doing the right things, discovering that right, according to cultural norms, and right, according to mathematical reality, are completely different things. But here's what I want you to understand, truly understand, before we part ways. It doesn't have to be this way for you. You have a choice, right now, today, this moment. You can choose differently than the 95% who will never build wealth. You can choose to define success on your own terms rather than society's terms. You can choose security over status. You can choose freedom over appearance. You can choose mathematics over psychology. This choice will cost you something. It will cost you approval. It will cost you fitting in. It will cost you the comfort of looking like you've made it before you've actually made it. People will misunderstand you. They'll think you're cheap or weird or missing out on life. They'll pity you for driving the old car. They'll question why you live so modestly when you earn well. They'll wonder if something's wrong with you. Let them wonder. Because while they're spending their lives earning money to impress people who don't matter, you'll be building something real. Something that can't be repossessed or devalued or taken away by market forces or job loss or economic downturn. You'll be building security, options, time, peace. The actual prizes that matter, not the symbolic ones that don't. And here's what nobody tells you about this path. It gets easier. Not at first. At first, it's hard. The discipline feels painful. The sacrifice feels real. The social pressure feels overwhelming. But somewhere along the way, maybe at your first $50,000 in investments, maybe at 100,000, maybe at 250,000, something shifts. You stop caring what others think. You stop feeling deprived. You stop wanting to impress anyone because you have something more valuable than anyone's approval. You have peace, real peace. The peace that comes from knowing you're secure, that you're building something meaningful, that your future is protected. That peace, that deep, quiet, unshakable peace, becomes more valuable than any car or house or vacation or possession you gave up to get it. I've seen this transformation hundreds of times. People who start the journey feeling like they're sacrificing everything. And then years later, they realize they weren't sacrificing anything real. They were just letting go of things that never mattered in the first place. The old car gets you to the same destinations as the new one. The modest house provides the same shelter as the mansion. The simple meal satisfies hunger just as well as the expensive restaurant. What you give up, it's all just performance, just signaling, just the exhausting work of maintaining an image. And what you gain, it's freedom. It's waking up without financial anxiety. It's being able to walk away from situations that diminish you. It's having options that 95% of people don't have. It's the ability to say no. And in a world designed to make you say yes to everything, the ability to say no is power. This is what wealth really is. Not numbers in an account, not properties or portfolios or passive income streams. Those are just tools. Real wealth is autonomy. It's sovereignty over your own life. It's the ability to make decisions based on what's meaningful rather than what's necessary. Most people will never have this because they're not willing to do what it takes to get it. They want it, but not enough to actually change, not enough to actually sacrifice, not enough to actually be different. They want a magic solution, a shortcut, a way to build wealth while maintaining their current lifestyle, a way to look successful and be secure simultaneously. And when they discover that no such path exists, when they realize that wealth building requires real trade, often real discipline and real sacrifice, they choose comfort. They choose consumption. They choose fitting in. And they stay exactly where they are, earning more over time but never building anything, making a good living but never achieving security. 40 years of working, millions of dollars earned, nothing to show for it except a lifestyle they can't maintain without a paycheck. Don't let this be you. You have the knowledge now. You understand the game. You see the truth that most people refuse to see. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you file it away as interesting information and then continue living exactly as you have been? Will you agree with everything I've said and then change nothing? Or will you make a different choice? Will you commit to the wealth game instead of the status game? Will you choose security over appearance? Will you be willing to look ordinary while building something extraordinary? This is not a small decision. This is a life decision. This is choosing who you're going to be and what your life is going to mean and what you'll have to show for your decades on this earth. Most people never make this choice consciously. They just drift. They follow the path of least resistance. They do what everyone else does, and they end up where everyone else ends up. But you have the opportunity to choose differently, to live intentionally, to build deliberately, to reject the programming and write your own code. The honest truth is that wealth is available to you. Not guaranteed, not easy, not quick, but available, genuinely, mathematically achievable, not through luck or inheritance or special knowledge or insider connections, just through discipline, through patience, through the willingness to delay gratification, through the courage to be misunderstood. Everything you need you already have, the knowledge, the capability, the opportunity. The only question is whether you have the will, the commitment, the determination to stay the course when it's hard and boring and lonely, because it will be hard, it will be boring, it will be lonely. Building wealth is not exciting, it's not dramatic, it's not Instagram worthy, it's just persistent, consistent, disciplined, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. But at the end of that persistence, at the end of that consistency, at the end of that discipline, is something most people never experience. Freedom, real freedom. The freedom that comes from having enough, from being secure, from having options. That freedom is waiting for you, not somewhere in the distant future. At the end of a path you can start walking today, right now. This moment, you can make the choice. You can commit to the game. You can begin building something real. Not tomorrow, not next month, not when circumstances are perfect, now, because every day you delay is a day of compound growth you'll never recover. Every dollar you spend on status is a dollar that can't grow into security. Every year you postpone is a year your future self won't have. Time is the one ingredient you cannot buy, borrow, or manufacture, and you're spending it right now, either building wealth or building the appearance of wealth, either investing in security or investing in status. Choose wisely, choose consciously, choose with full awareness of what each path leads to. Most people will never be rich, but you can be different. You can be the exception. You can be the one who understood the truth and actually acted on it. Not because you're smarter or luckier or more talented, but because you were willing to sacrifice, willing to be different, willing to endure the discomfort of building something real while everyone else was performing something fake. That willingness, that's all it takes. That's the entire secret. Everything else is just mathematics and time, and the mathematics work. The time will pass. The compound interest will do its job. If you just stay the course, if you just keep going, if you just refuse to quit, 10 years from now you'll be somewhere. Either you'll be 10 years older with nothing to show for it, or you'll be 10 years older and significantly wealthier. The time will pass either way. The question is what you'll have built during that passage. Build wealth, build security, build freedom, build peace, not for anyone else, not to prove anything, not to impress or compete or win approval, but for yourself, for your future self, for the person you'll be at 60 or 70 or 80, looking back on these decisions and either thanking you or resenting you for the choices you made. Be the person your future self thanks. Make the sacrifices today that create security tomorrow. Play the long game, stay the course. Keep going. Most people won't, but you can. That's the honest truth. That's the real secret. That's everything you need to know. Now go. Begin. Build. And never, ever look back with regret because you chose appearance over reality, status over security, comfort today over freedom tomorrow. Your wealth is waiting, not in some distant, impossible future, but at the end of consistent, disciplined action starting today. Go claim it.